TNWs are obviously nuclear weapons. The argument that we say nuclear weapons in the card, but we remove TNWs doesn't make sense. And our definition calls for nuclear weapons withdrawal. It is reasonable. And as long as they have been proven that our Kapashadi counterinterpretation is unreasonable, and as long as our definition isn't unreasonable, there's no reason to reject the act for it. So our definition calls for nuclear weapons, so it's reasonable. There might be infinite weapons, but there are a limited number of nuclear weapons. And the word substantial checks for reducing one prototype nuclear weapon that might exist. So our topic is clearly reasonable. And as long as our counterinterpretation is reasonable, there's no reason to vote us down. And since there's no reason to vote us down, they didn't, because they haven't shown that our counterinterpretation is unreasonable, there's no reason to vote us down. And because there's no reason to vote us down, you shouldn't vote on T. Now onto the dissad. They still didn't answer that that the proliferation solves the arms race. They read this card that said that the Middle East would proliferate and this would result in an arms race that would lead to nuclear war. But our card clearly stated that nuclear proliferation solves the arms race. There won't be an arms race if nuclear proliferation happens. So thus their impacts of nuclear war don't hold true. Also, they said that prolif is good is ridiculous, and that's not ridiculous. It makes sense. Why would a country start a war that would have such devastating effects? It absolutely makes sense that there wouldn't be war if the country's prolif. And now onto case. First, once again, their card was, or they didn't finish their other card, so they have no warrants for their other card. So the only card they have is that the first card they read that said self-fulfilling prophecy solves war, which is from '96. And once again, our evidence is better because it outdates, and you have to prefer our evidence because there's just a slight chance that it's changed. Also, our author is an international relations studiist. I don't even know what an eco-psychologist is. No one has heard what this term is. This term has absolutely no warrant. They did not explain what an eco-psychologist is. And the card says ecologist first. The card clearly states ecologist first, which means that he's an ecologist, and thus the card has no warrant. And now on the and you have to evaluate our critique, which takes out both of their disads because they're clearly, or their disads linked to our critique, and their disads are clearly threat constructions. So if we pull out, so thus the disads will be solved by our plan, so they don't have any impacts for their disads. And on case, we extend the inherency that they didn't address. We extend our links of preemption, and and we extend our impacts. Our impacts outweigh their impacts, even if our critiques and our terms don't hold true, because our impacts are systemic. They're happening right now. The impacts of biopolitics and creating biopolitics is a situation that is happening right now, and because our impacts are systemic, our impacts clearly outweigh, because the magnitude is the greatest atrocities in history. And this is a constant thing. Genocide has been going on for years and years. Biopolitics has existed, and genocide is going on for years and years. It will continue to go on if we don't solve. Our impact outweighs because our impact isn't just a one-time thing. It's not a one-time nuclear war. It's a constant cycle of genocide. So our impact has a far greater magnitude than both our nuclear wars. So on magnitude outweigh. On time frame we outweigh because our impacts are happening right now. Our impacts are systemic. It's right now that's happening. Their impacts talk about having threat construction or threat construction. So their impacts, it's okay, I don't need that. Their impacts, first off, might not happen, but their impacts also take a while. It takes a while for proliferation to happen, whereas our impacts are happening right now. So we outweigh on time frame. Also, we turn them, so they don't have them anyways. And for probability, our impacts are happening right now, so we have 100% chance. Their cards, it's possible. We've shown arguments against all theirs, which we've shown reasons why their impacts won't happen, so they don't have as high of a probability as we do, because our probability is 100%, and theirs are not. So we outweigh on magnitude, time frame, and probability, so our impacts should be weighed over theirs, because our impacts, as we have shown, are far more damaging than their impacts, so you must prefer us. We have also shown through our case that their disads link, so first of all, their disads don't even happen. Their impacts, they don't have any impacts because of that. And secondly, we have turned both of theirs. We have turned their disad for Turkish proliferation by showing that the impacts won't happen because the countries won't fight a war, knowing how devastating the war is. And that's why you should vote affirmative.
The prolif
start over again?
It's the prolix dissent, the troops, T, and then the Russians. Okay, so on the prolix dissent, they said that they saw for the arms race, but that isn't even what we read. We read the Solosky 7 carbon says that Turkey nuclearization leads to Middle East nuclear war. Also, in the card says that if Turkey acquired these nukes, it would just be a nuclear war. Like they can't claim to solve for this arms race. With this card they read, this wasn't even what we were talking about in that card. But anyway, and also when they said that why wouldn't the country start war? Well, we read on the Russian that irrational actors could get the weapons, which would lead to nuclear war. And then also well, I'll get to like the later, but we're dropping that. We're not going to that. But and then okay, so on topicality. Extend the violation and interpretation. You prefer interpretation. They didn't have any author battle at all, which means they can see the fact that our author is better, and it's better for debate because if we debate about definitions that are from authors that actually know what they're doing and actually are in the military field, that's good for debate. Except the standards that first of all that their interpretation would explode the topic, which would lead to bad debates, and also the one that we allow for most educational predictable ground because troops are the heart of the topic. We could actually learn about these troops, and also like they destroy the ground and also, they said that substantial does not check. The fact that in the beginning of my speech I said that the T says that you have to like very specifically define that presence equals troops, and it's not military. Substantial is not checked, and either way they didn't have a card, so it's just an analytical against an analytical anyways. They like completely dropped all the standards. They just say they literally went just for reasonability, which I said was horrible because you have to either have to be topical or not topical. You can't be kind of topical. We've shown that this is bad for debate because it exposes the topic and because these bright lines are needed to actually have a good educational debate about things. Reasonability is horrible because of this. I said this in the other round. That's why I'm extending it right now. They say we haven't proven it's unreasonable. We have proven it's unreasonable because it kills the topic because they more and more they can literally choose any type of weapon to choose which kills debate. Extend the voter, which means you vote negative because they're not topical. They destroy debate. And how much time do I have?
2:28.
They're on the Russia dissent. Once again, so they basically can see the link and the uniqueness. They like barely even talked about this impact term that they made, which also means that you prefer our cards because they're from professors of Russian national security studies. That say very specifically like if Russia expanded, it would be horrible because it would lead to extinction and nuclear war. They see systemic impacts, but that it's a one-time thing. But at the point which we prove it, that these one-time thing could lead to extinction, which means that this increases a lot. You prefer this one-time extinction over systemic impact because I like to live, and I'm sure everyone else likes to live. If their affirmative leads to a global nuclear war that leads to extinction, it means their plan is horrible. So it proves that they're not topical, and it's also bad, which means you vote negative on this, and also it's very probable. The uniqueness and the link cards say that Russia would expand because they're just waiting our presence to turn them in the status quo. But if we withdrew these weapons, then Russia would expand and it would cause a nuclear war. Then on time frame, they just said that it would take a long time. As soon as we withdraw and Russia ceases this week, they would expand immediately. You saw what happened in Georgia. Like they didn't waste any time. They didn't waste any time to expand. Russia's waiting to expand. As soon as we withdraw troops, they expand and it leads to nuclear war. Then they tried the security case thing, which says that they solve for this, which is clearly not true. If their plan leads to extinction, they can't solve for that because, like I said, Russia would expand right away. Just having this security alternative, they think that they can turn all the dissets, which is clearly not true, because if the app results in this security, like this security thing would not turn it. And also they didn't, like, once again they just said that our author is old and we have a bad author on the self-fulfilling prophecy is backwards, which means you agree that if when we actually like don't like when we like keep these things aside, actually leads to more like more probability of things happening, which means that they don't look, disadvantage does not affect the disads at all. And also like topicality over this at all times. So we've basically showed that they're not topical whatsoever, and that Russia expansionism is horrible. And then on the prolif, they have no offense, because prolif is horrible. It leads to nuclear war and proliferation. And
first of all, they said. Okay, they said that they should prefer their interpretation because their author is better, and because they have military authors. However, we have a military author as well, and our military author is just as qualified as their military author if that's their reason that their author is better. And then they said reasonability is bad. However, reasonability is not bad. It just allows, it makes sense. It makes the affirmative more predictable, because if you choose a reasonable affirmative to debate, then it just allows the negative to prepare more. So in essence, we're actually giving the negative more ground by being reasonable. And then the counter-interpret, they say that we're exploding the limits on the topic. However, the counter-interpretation distinguishes that it's only nuclear weapons. And so since we meet the counter-interpretation that it's only nuclear weapons, A, we're not exploding the topic, and B, we do meet our counter-interpretation. And then second, all their arguments are about potential abuse, and potential abuse is not a voter, because potential abuse is just saying that, oh, what could have been. And then now on to the dissad, the Russia dissad. So they said that their one-time extinction is over systemic impacts. However, their one-time extinction still links into our critique. This one-time extinction is still threat construction, and since it's still threat construction, you have to evaluate it as just how that it links 100% into our critique. And since it links 100% into our critique, the impact is it's just a threat construction, and it's it is a self-fulfilling prophecy. And we now on to case. So first of all, on case, the only argument they made is that the author is more credible, and they pretty much didn't even address that in their 2NR speech. And so they're pretty much conceding that their author is not as credible. And so since they conceded that our author is more credible, you have to agree to our interpretation that self-fulfilling prophecy is bad, and therefore that their dissads link both their dissads link into our critique, and so our impacts and so the impact of self-fulfilling prophecy is bad, and so and then we do solve because challenging nuclear weapons must start with Turkey, and this reopens the state of disagreement. And this disagreement is necessary because this systemic impacts will just systemic impacts will occur because TNWs in Turkey are currently looking for this new mission of preemption, and then our impact to our advantage is biopolitics, and biopolitics is a deontological and epistemological advantage. Sorry, not epistemological. Sorry, a consequentialist advantage, and so because it has a biopolitics, which is the biopolitics through war is just dehumanizing, as our card proves, and then war itself is, genocide itself is consequentialist impact as loss of life is there, and thus we outweigh. We've proven that our advantage is that our advantage of genocide is infinitely more magnitude, infinitely higher probability, and infinitely lower time frame. We've proven that war through biopolitics is the worst impact through two cards that we read. It just keeps happening. It's a systemic impact, and so you have to evaluate this impact over all other impacts. As we've proven that that we do meet their topicality, and so that their topicality, we do meet that. We are 100% topical, and so you can't even evaluate the T in this round. And then, so that means we outweigh on their dissad because first of all they link into our critique, so you can't evaluate the dissad. And if not that, then we did turn the dissad, and so, and then we also outweigh because our impact of biopolitics is the worst impact possible. And for those reasons, you should